Erick, 877-973-7425. You can also get me on social media, EW Erickson. You can also go to ewerickson.com. I got a recipe coming out at noon. If you want it, text the word recipe to 33777. I remember hearing a joke years ago from a preacher. And then in seminary, I heard it again from one of the professors. And you may have heard of this joke. There was a Baptist church. The church was looking for a new pastor. And they got a young guy. He was right out of Southern Seminary, Al Mohler's finest. And he gets in that pulpit and he preaches just an amazing sermon. Amazing sermon on loving your neighbor, seeking the welfare of your community. It hits all my sweet spots. Love your neighbor as yourself. Seek the welfare of the community in which you live, because there you'll find your welfare. It was an amazing sermon. The deacons loved it. The offertory was amazing. The congregation was amazed, and word got out that they found themselves a hot young pastor to show up and preach Jesus. And they asked that young buck to come back the next week, because they wanted 3 sermons just to make sure. He came back the next Sunday. That kid got in the pulpit, rolled up his sleeves, furrowed his brow, the sweat began to pour, and he began to preach the gospel. Almost word for word what he had said the week before. And the congregation kind of muttered, and those who had come in to hear this guy, they were kind of nodding their head like, yeah, this guy's really good. Everybody who had been there the week before was kind of perplexed. Afterwards, the deacons got together. They said, I don't know. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he's right out of seminary. Maybe he was good. Maybe Al Mohler failed him and didn't really get him good. Maybe he only had one trick sermon in there. Said, tell you what, brothers, let's bring Brother Jeffrey back and put him in the pulpit one more Sunday. Maybe he just had a bad week. Maybe he got confused. We'll see what he can do. So they brought him back that third time. They had wanted 3 anyway. And he gets up in the pulpit and he preaches the same sermon a third time. And at the end of the sermon, he says, brothers and sisters, I see in the crowd a look of confusion. You're thinking, I've heard this before. You're thinking, I heard him do it last Sunday and we thought he was confused. I heard him do it the first Sunday and I loved it. Now you've heard me do it the third Sunday and you're thinking, is he out of his mind? Does he only have one sermon? And I would say to you, you heard me 3 weeks ago, you heard me 2 weeks ago, you heard me last week, and you heard me today. Have you done a word I said from the sermon? I always like that joke. I say it because I'm about to preach the same sermon I've been preaching. And some of you are going to listen and say, well, I heard this yesterday or I heard this Friday. But I want you to hear it again. And I don't care whether you're listening in Texas. If you're listening in California, you know the sermon because you have lived the sermon. With the fall of the California Republican Party, the Republican Party that sent Ronald Reagan to the White House, you've heard the sermon. If you live in Texas, you're living this sermon right now. The passage of scripture may be different, but you're living it. And if you're living here where I am in Georgia, well, you need to meditate on this. The Georgia Republican Party is committing suicide like the Texas Republican Party is right now. Beholden to a chamber of commerce, they need social conservatives to come vote for them, and they just use them and abuse them. They want their votes, but please shut up. They are beholden to the Chamber of Commerce. The only time they do socially conservative things is when they know they'll never go into effect. Using the Chamber of Commerce model, the Republicans here in Georgia, they do what Delta wants. They do what Home Depot wants. They do what Coca-Cola wants. They don't do what you want. For years, Republicans in Georgia campaigned on passing the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Georgia is one of the few states in the nation that doesn't have it. Back in the day, Bill Clinton and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi wrote it and passed it. And the Democrats in Georgia didn't think they needed it. They said, well, that'll never happen here. We don't need this. Now the Republicans are in charge, and it's happening. You've got the governments of small towns and big cities imposing their will on Christians, and the Republicans are like, well, we can't do this because Hollywood will leave. We need the money. But they've campaigned on it. The year was 2000. When was it? 2013? No, 2012. It must have been 2012. The Republicans in Georgia finally passed RFRA. Nathan Deal had campaigned on signing it into law if it was ever passed. All the Republicans said they'd do it, and then they blocked it every year. And in 2012, Nathan Deal was not up for re-election, but all the Republicans in the legislature were, so they passed it. Deal told them privately he would veto it. So they passed it, saying, we did it. It's that damn governor who vetoed it. It's his fault, not our fault. They never would have passed it had he not promised to veto it. So they could claim they passed it, do a bait and switch, and never actually have to live with it. Last year, Republicans in the state legislature passed the fetal heartbeat legislation. Multiple Republicans voted for it, not because they support it, but because they knew it would never get passed into law. A federal judge would stop it. They could take the heat, and then they could go back and say, I'm so conservative, I voted to save those babies, knowing that if there was ever a chance a federal judge would let it go into law, there's no way they would have voted for it. In the early 2000s, Jennifer Keaton was a student at Augusta State University. She's an open Christian who believes homosexuality is a sin, but she's still lovingly willing to counsel anyone who is gay, transgender, you name it. She's willing to be a counselor and a friend to anyone. But she's an Orthodox, Bible-believing Christian, including on biblical sexual ethic. Augusta State University came to her and said she needed to renounce her religion if she was going to stay in the counseling program. They couldn't have a Christian in the program who really believed Christianity. In fact, they wanted her to take classes showing her how the Christian religion was full of bigotry towards people who were not heterosexual, straight, cisgendered. And she declined. They threw her out of the program. She sued in federal court and lost. A few years later, two students at Georgia Tech who were Christians and ran conservative groups on campus were called in. One of them was called into the dean of students and told the student was a shameful bigot, and that if her organization, the College Republicans, did not want to participate in Coming Out Week to celebrate gay pride, that the organization was a shameful organization and it needed to be sidelined on campus, and they were forced to go to a tiny corner of campus no one ever visited, and that was the only place they could talk. She stuck to her guns, continued to practice her religion and be open about it on campus, was headed towards graduation with top honors at Georgia Tech. And the president of the university called her into his office to inform her she needed to go find somewhere else to graduate from unless she was going to repudiate her Christian faith. They didn't need intolerant Christians like that at Georgia Tech. She wound up having to file a federal lawsuit. All this stuff, I'm not making this stuff up. This is in the federal record. These things happened to this student. Not only did these things happen to the student, but the campus, Georgia Tech, a state-funded institution, decided to start publishing a guide to the religions that were present on Georgia Tech's campus in order of tolerance. The Buddhists, who believe nothing, so they believe everything, were listed as the most tolerant. The Southern Baptists were listed as the most intolerant group on campus. All of this, again, in a federal court record. Georgia Tech was brutalized by the federal court system, lost the case. But the student had to go to graduation with armed police officers because she was receiving so many death threats, and the university did nothing to stop the threats and harassment against her. They were so hateful of her that she was a Christian bigot. They wanted her gone from campus. And when people started groups to oppose her on campus and started harassing her and giving her death threats and graphic depictions of the rapes they would commit on her and the like, the university did nothing. The university lost. On Monday of this week, Georgia Gwinnett College became the latest Georgia public institution to lose in the United States Supreme Court for persecuting Christians on campus. 2 open evangelical Christians were told they were not allowed to talk about their faith on campus. And when they continued to do so, they were marginalized by campus security to a tiny part of campus no one visited. And yet they would continue to show up there and do it, complying with what the university said, until university security told them they weren't allowed to even be there. They filed a lawsuit. And yet again, in an 8-1 decision, 9-0 on the merits, written by Clarence Thomas, yet again, Christians beat a Georgia public institution. This has been going on for 2 decades now in Georgia, and our state legislature has done absolutely nothing. They have passed no laws, and they have conducted no investigations. As I have mentioned repeatedly on this program, the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles has released after 7 years from prison a man dubbed by the judge who sentenced him to 1,000 years in prison, the world's most prolific collector of child pornography. This man, it was discovered at trial, has a compulsion towards child pornography and predatory behavior. He's now on the streets of Atlanta, thanks to the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles. The Georgia Court of Appeals upheld the 1,000-year prison sentence and said it was not excessive. And 2 weeks later, the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles let him out after 7. According to the court record, the man had more than 26,000 pictures and videos of child pornography, not just pictures of naked kids. He had pictures and videos of children, young kids, being raped and tortured. And he's out on the streets in Atlanta because of the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles. And our legislature has done nothing. They have not investigated, they have not legislated, they have not impeached. But in November, Donald Trump lost by 11,000 votes, and the Republicans lost 2 Senate seats. And the Georgia Republicans are convinced their days may be at an end in power. And so they are moving heaven and earth to restrict absentee balloting and early voting and make it more burdensome to vote. And they're telling you they're doing it for you. They're telling you they hear your concerns about the integrity of the election. But are they doing it for you, or are they doing it for them? They never seem to act when it's you and your kids. This week in the Georgia legislature, they have killed legislation that would allow the children of active duty military stuck in closed public schools to have access to private schools. They've killed legislation that would allow special needs kids to have access to alternative school systems and private education if their public schools are closed and they can't get in to meet their independent, customized program within public schools. They have killed legislation that would protect girls from boys competing on girls' athletic teams. They have killed legislation to protect girls' sports. They have killed legislation that would help homeschoolers in after-school programs. They have killed every measure designed to improve the lives of Georgia's families. But they've done the Chamber of Commerce's bidding, and now they're working to protect their power. Time and again, the Georgia Republicans in the Georgia legislature turn a blind eye to your concerns. They won't investigate or impeach the Board of Pardon and Paroles for letting out of prison after 7 years a man sentenced to 1,000 years with a predatory predilection for preying on your children. They won't investigate Georgia's publicly funded colleges and universities for repeatedly persecuting Christians, doing the same thing on multiple institutions, and then only walking it back when the students were brave enough to sue. They won't protect your daughters in their sports. They won't protect you in your homes. But they'll protect our Fortune 500 companies. And they'll protect themselves. This is the suicide of the Republican Party. The same thing is happening in Texas, where Texas continues to claim to be the Republican conservative independent state and yet continually sells out its voters, its conservatives, its Christians. They talk a good game in Texas. All my friends love Texas. I love Texas too. But the governor and the legislature continue to poop on the citizens of Texas who actually are conservative and Christian, scared to death their days are numbered. They're doing everything they can to appear to be Democrat, given just a little bit they're Democrat light, but you can't beat the real thing in Texas or in Georgia. At some point, the voters in both states are going to say, well, y'all gave it a go, and you did nothing different from them except you didn't give us as much as they want to give us. So maybe we should go with the real thing. And these Republicans who have sold you out, sold people of faith out, sold your kids out, protected a board of pardon and parole that protects child predators, protected schools that persecute Christians, and protected themselves from the voters, their days are numbered, and they've only got themselves to blame.
News and in-depth analysis from Erick Erickson.
on Monday night here at my, so I had to take off Monday morning. I'd gotten the vaccine on Saturday and wasn't feeling great on Sunday. Wasn't sure I was going to be around on Monday. And Monday morning, early Monday morning, I was still not feeling great. But gosh, by Monday at 10 a.m., I felt perfectly fine. Doctors say this is a sign. By the way, there's a rumor going around, and in fact, we've gotten a couple emails from people that hospitals in Georgia have more patients now dealing with COVID vaccine side effects than they have COVID patients. We've gotten this from multiple people. It is a rumor going around. I want you to know this isn't true. You're hearing it from people you trust on social media who are hearing it from friends who claim it's true, who claim to have inside knowledge. It's not actually true. Now, how do I know? Because I and the news team that works with my evening radio show, we're calling all the hospitals. And we're talking to doctors. And it's simply not true. It is a rumor that's out there, but you get these rumors all the time on the internet and you believe they're true because the friend you trust posted it and they claim to have someone who actually knows. It's very much like the people I know who they claim to know someone who was listed as dying of COVID and the relatives are upset about it. And I tried reaching out to all these people back last year and none of them wanted to talk and most of them didn't exist. It's a rumor that's spreading and it's not true. But the side effects are definitely true for about 24 hours after the vaccine. If you're under 60, you tend to not feel good for about 24 hours and then you feel fine. And it's actually because of the way mRNA vaccines work, it's natural that happens. And it's actually a sign that the vaccine is working. In any event, I was feeling great on Monday. I got ribs from Omaha Steaks, baby back ribs, and I put them on my Rectech smoker. And they were incredible. Now, my wife doesn't particularly care for ribs, and she didn't like the rub that I put on them. She didn't like the smell. I gave every last one of them to Philip, who shared them with his family, and they all loved them. In fact, I may have to put up my smoked rib recipe today, so you should do that. But right now, I want to tell you, I got them from Omaha Steaks. They were great quality, and you too can go to omahasteaks.com. If you put Georgia in the search bar, Georgia, the name of our state, in the search bar, what you will find is the Butcher's Bestsellers package. And with that package, you will get fillets, you'll get pork chops, you'll get burgers, you'll get caramel apple tartlets. You can get in a complete meal, throw on your grill, throw in the oven. It's fantastic and incredible quality. You can't beat the quality or the value from Omaha Steaks. So go to omahasteaks.com right now, put Georgia in the search bar. And if you do it, you're going to get 4 free burgers and 4 free chicken breasts to go with your order. You already get a ton of food, and you're going to get 4 more burgers and 4 more chicken breasts for free. It's a great deal. It really is good quality. I get it for myself. They don't send it to me. I buy it myself. I believe in this product because it really is good. Their ribs were fantastic. omahasteaks.com. Put Georgia in the search bar. It's a great deal and a great value. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson. Hopefully, for those of you listening online, we got apparently, I guess somebody bumped the knob, and I'm getting complaints from people that the online stream sounds a little. I have fixed the YouTube and Facebook audio. I hope. I wasn't going to go here, but I might as well because we have gotten between my team that monitors the contact email and me watching emails come directly to me and my email address and comments on Facebook and the like, we're getting an extraordinary number of people making the claim that in Georgia there are more people in hospitals right now with reaction to the COVID vaccine than to COVID itself. It's an extraordinary claim, and we're not alone in getting this. Now, just so you have the appropriate information on you right now, in Georgia right now, there have been 56,971 total hospitalizations. There are currently, as of today, 135 hospitalizations. That's actual hospitalizations gone in today. That information will be updated here shortly, but it's not active hospitalizations. It's more than that. Now, here's the reason I bring this up is a lot of people have been getting this, and I'm sure it's not just here in Georgia. And the rumor is, and you're seeing people comment on it on Facebook and the like, that there are more people in hospitals right now having reactions to the COVID vaccine than who actually have COVID itself. It's not true. Now, how do I know it's not true? Well, not really just me, but a lot of news reporters in the state and even doctors who are hearing this have been calling around and reporting back. And it's not true. Every hospital in the state says it's not true. Public health says it's not true. And I realize, see, this is where postmodernism comes in. In fact, in the third hour, I'm going to talk to Christopher Rufo about critical theory. He's been out there in the front writing about it. Postmodernism is the idea that we're not supposed to actually have objective truth. And you can't believe anyone when they say that something is true. You're supposed to doubt everything, and the people you're supposed to believe are those you have a trust connection to, not those on the outside you don't know. And you're supposed to have your truth, not actual truth. And it's where this doubt comes from that I read it on Facebook from my aunt. My aunt tells me she knows someone who works in a hospital who says this is true. Well, I'm not going to believe the hospitals because they've obviously got malicious motives. My presumption is not to love my neighbor as myself and presume the best about them. The presumption in postmodernism is to hate my neighbor and presume the worst about them, particularly if they're not like me. Well, a hospital is clearly not like me, therefore I must presume bad motives, financial interest, and lies. So when the hospital comes out and says, no, this isn't true, well, I'm going to believe my aunt who says she knows someone on Facebook who says this is true, who has reason to know. We got this last year during the pandemic when people were calling the show saying, I know so many people who died and they were listed as COVID deaths and they weren't. They had a heart attack or they had cancer or something. And give me their name. They would never give me their name. We actually had a law enforcement official up in North Georgia reach out to me and say he knew multiple people who had this experience. I said, I would love to talk to these people. Can you connect to me? He said, I will ask them and report back. Never heard from him again. This has happened repeatedly. It's part of postmodernism. You believe what you are hearing from people who you trust, and they may not be reliable narrators. But you have a relationship with them, you're never going to call your friend a liar. So when your aunt puts on Facebook that you need to stockpile your water because there's going to be an insurrection and the power's going to get cut off, and on March 4th, Donald Trump's going to be restored president of the United States, you believe her as opposed to believing actual truth. I mean, how many of you experienced this with your senior citizen relatives over January 6th and March 4th? That, don't worry, Joe Biden really isn't going to be president. I still have people pissed off at me for pointing out that Joe Biden actually was going to become president on January 20th. And they're still very adamant that Donald Trump is coming back this month. He's not. But yet, you can't talk to him because they read from someone they trust on the internet that this is so. So who cares what the actual truth is? And now we're in this situation where who cares that no hospital and no doctor in the state can corroborate or flat out denies that there are more people in the hospital with side effects from the vaccine than from COVID, because your best friends, mothers, doctors, best friends, lovers, sons, adulteresses, mistresses, cat said that this is so. Well, the cat must be so. And the cat must be honest. Who cares what the hospital says? Who cares what Brian Kemp says? Who cares what Kathleen Toomey says? Who cares what the local hospital says? Who cares what any of them say? If you read it on Facebook, it must be true. And I want to tie this very specifically into this idea of postmodernism, because I have struggled for the longest time with what does a postmodern society look like. This is what postmodern society looks like. In the philosophical concept of modernism, there can be objective truth. In postmodernism, there can only be your truth and my truth. In modernism, philosophical modernism, there can be a real discernible fact and objectivity. In postmodernism, there can't. In philosophical modernism, there can be an outside source on which you rely to get the truth. In philosophical postmodernism, no outside source can be believed because there's no such thing as actual truth. There's only your truth, and those people you have a relationship with can convey to you things that you can embrace as your truth because there's no actual reality. That's postmodernism. It sounds like hogwash, but it's what everybody's doing right now. That, well, I can't believe the press anymore, and there's good reason to not believe the press. But I can't believe the hospital now because the hospital has nefarious purposes. I can't believe the vaccine company because the vaccine company has nefarious purposes. Essentially, modernism presumes that you accept the truth that's given to you, and then possibly you can have some doubt based on other motives. With postmodernism, you don't accept the truth and you immediately presume to doubt until proven otherwise. You do it exactly opposite. Postmodernism is actually incompatible with people of faith. You hear people talk about deconstructing their faith these days and walking away from the faith. What it is people presume that Scripture lies. Your starting point in modernism is to presume that someone's telling you the truth. Your starting point in postmodernism is to believe that someone's starting with a lie. So when you approach the Bible in postmodernism, the presumption is that it's all a lie, and you deconstruct every truth in the Bible to reveal the lie. That's why, for example, you've got a bunch of churches that have embraced postmodernism, and they don't look anything like the Christian faith you and I know and practice. In fact, the fancy evangelical church in Grace or whatever up in Nashville that Carrie Underwood's a member of came out several years ago and said that it was now embracing gay marriage, despite the Bible saying that marriage is between a man and a woman. And now in the last week, they've released a thing saying, well, the Bible is not inerrant and the Bible is not the word of God. That's postmodernism. They have deconstructed and broken out the truth of the Bible to say, none of this stuff is credible. Let's explain why, as opposed to this stuff is credible. Let's explain why. The bottom line between modernism and postmodernism is that with modernism, you presume you can get to a real truth that everyone can get to. And you begin by believing there is objectivity. With postmodernism, you believe there's nothing objective, everything is subjective, and nothing is actually true except for what you want to believe. So when someone puts something on Facebook that you believe, you accept it as true. Now, we've seen this for a while now. How many of you have encountered these situations that, did you hear that the gangs are going to be out tonight? In fact, there's going around right now where the gangs are supposed to kill one white virgin in high school, and if they kill one white virgin in high school, it's their gang initiation. Did y'all know that the gangs, they're supposed to rob the local grocery store and then they're supposed to shove the Snicker bar that they get up? Yep, it's gang initiation. It's happening tonight. Lock your doors and keep your kids inside. I mean, how many of y'all heard this? I've heard these things for years in Macon, and it's never true. You talk to the police, they're like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's on Facebook. It must be true. Aunt Flo's, Uncle Johnny's, Jim Bob's brother's next door neighbor's incestuous relationship with a dog says it's true. It must be true. That's postmodernism at work. I'm sorry. The amount of emails I get on this stuff, I was like, where are people getting this? They get it on social media or conversations and text message threads with their friends. And you know, at least I gotta be thankful to some degree for the good local reporters who they're not into politics. They just pick up the phone and they ask questions. Hey, there's this thing on Facebook. Someone says that there are more people in the hospital with vaccine related illness than there are with the actual illness. We're not aware of that, sir. Well, can you check? We'll check. Nope, not true. And they report back. Well, of course you're saying it's not true because you're a member of the liberal media. Meanwhile, the guy's a card-carrying Republican. You know, as an aside, sort of the lessons I've learned in life in the media is that local reporters tend to be way more conservative than national reporters. If you want to find where your card-carrying, Republican voting conservatives are in the news, you go to the local newsrooms around the country. You don't go to NBC, ABC, CBS. Frankly, you don't even go to Fox. There are a lot of liberals on TV at Fox or behind the camera or the like. It's the local ABC affiliate or NBC affiliate or CBS affiliate, the local Fox affiliate. The guy who's sitting there giving you the news at night, local, that guy is more likely than not conservative. Your local weatherman is probably a conservative. It's the guys on CNN and MSNBC and the national news networks. Those are where all the liberals are. They're up in New York City. It's fascinating. I just assumed when I started in being on CNN and then at Fox and being on radio, I just assumed everybody except me was liberal. And then I would have people in local newsrooms when I would do interviews one-on-one with a local news station. We'd be off camera, and the local anchor would be, man, I love Red State. I read what you say. Did you see this thing at National Review? Have you paid attention to this? And I was what? This guy's a conservative. And I know one local anchor in Atlanta who was the chairman of the college Republicans when he was in college. Leaves it off his resume. All of his friends make sure not to bring it up. But super conservative. It's the national guys who are the progressives. Now, Fox is more conservative, even with the people you see on the camera than anyone else. But my goodness gracious, it's remarkable to me how everyone thinks that everybody in the media is liberal, and to a degree, it's true. And in newspapers that are national newspapers, it's true. But your local newspaper, like I get the Monroe County Reporter. And its publisher is super conservative. In fact, those of you who are in Middle Georgia, you'll appreciate this story. So the newspaper in Monroe County that I subscribe to is a conservative newspaper. Will Davis, its publisher, is a conservative guy, and they do really good local news coverage. And the superintendent of the schools up there has gone super woke. And, for example, banned a volunteer broadcaster of football games for daring to question on his personal Facebook page why school officials were participating in woke protests. They've harassed the publisher of the newspaper's kids because their dad's a conservative in the school system. It's just been appalling to see the local bureaucrats of the local public school system do stuff like this. Who've gone to the left, and you got one local newspaper willing to call them out for bullying. I mean, I totally support those local newspapers, and those local newspapers, by the way, tend to actually be more profitable than some of the bigger ones because, you know, grandmom and granddad want to see their kid in the local paper, and they'll take out the ad or the congratulations on the 4-H or whatnot. But that's where your conservatives are in the media. Your local news tends to be way more conservative than your national news, and you can trust them. And they pick up the phone, and they're the ones who are saying this isn't true. This more vaccine-related hospitalizations than actual COVID patients, that it's simply not true. And yet your aunt on Facebook said it was so you're going to believe it. This is postmodern America.
Want to be on the show? Call Eric now at 877-
Hello there. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, you are more than welcome to call in instead of just sending me hate mail. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. My wife said something last night. My wife is, believe it or not hyper-political. Thank God she's not. When Christy and I were in college together, we weren't dating. We were just friends. Our roommates were engaged, and Christy and I were the ones who had cars. And so we were the ones always having to drive them around. And so I was in, Jack Kemp came through Macon in 1996. Jack Kemp and Bob Dole were running against Bill Clinton and Al Gore in 1996. I was in the chairman of the College Republicans at Mercer. I had become the state chairman of the College Republicans by accident, long story. And they asked if I would drive in the motorcade. So I did. He came into Macon, and Kemp went to downtown Macon, went to the Bears Den. Those of you, if you've never been to Macon, the Bears Den is kind of somewhere you have to go eat in Macon. It's meat and 3, meat and 2. You get a meat and 2 vegetables, great dessert. Great lemonade. Get the lemonade. And I get the same thing every time I go to the Bears Den. Chicken tenders, green beans, and macaroni and cheese. My wife could live on the green beans and macaroni and cheese. When she's not feeling good, she wants the green beans, macaroni, and cheese. Thursday is fried green tomato day as well. But nonetheless, I digress. Jack Kemp went to the Bears Den. So I am in the car, and I am the lead vehicle behind the limousine. Interestingly enough, it was Ed Follner in the car with me. He was Kemp's chief of staff. And we only made this connection years later. He remembered the trip to Macon. Ed Follner was Jack Kemp's speechwriter and chief of staff. He went on to be the president of the Heritage Foundation. I think he took a leave of absence from Heritage to help Kemp in any event. So there I am, and Christy's in college. I am so excited, and I've got a cell phone, PowerTel Nokia cell phone. And I call Christy. I tell her, you'll never guess what I'm doing. What's that? I am in Jack Kemp's motorcade. Well, who is Jack Kemp? Really? He's running for vice president. And there's just this pause. And then she says, you got to run to be vice president of the university? Of the United States, not a Mercer. Yeah. And then my roommate who was with me, I'd roped into this. He taps on the window, and I rolled out the window. He's like, all right, this is awesome, but who is this guy? None of my friends were political. I was roping all my friends and stuff. None of them were political. Well, my wife has one issue on which she cares about passionately. It is the issue that galvanizes her. Daylight saving time. It is my wife's least favorite day of the year. My wife would rather go to Emory and be poked and prodded for her oncology visits than to have to deal with daylight saving time. And it's saving time, not savings time. Daylight saving time. My wife will vote for anyone, Democrat, Republican, Communist, Libertarian, Green Party, atheist, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Zoroastrian, animist, anyone who will commit that this will be the last time change we ever have to do in the United States of America. There's a bill in the Georgia legislature to do this, but naturally, the Georgia Republicans yet again are screwing the people that they only care about themselves. They don't care about the rest of us. They're not going to pass it. You actually, as a state, are allowed to pass legislation without congressional approval if you want to stay on standard time. We're in standard time right now where it's sun up in the morning early and it gets dark early. I actually like it primarily because of the 4th of July. I hate that you got to stay up until after 9:30, 10 o'clock to shoot fireworks without the sun. I would be perfectly fine with it being dark after 8:30 or so at night, like a normal human being. But no, a lot of people, Marco Rubio wants daylight saving time because daylight saving time, it's dark in the morning, but it stays late in the evening. And Florida loves that for the tourists. The tourists get to hang out on the beach and it's daylight and hang out on the bars and you still got sun. I get it. I don't care. I just hate the fallback in the spring forward. I tend to agree with my wife. If we can make this the last fallback spring forward ever, I think it'd be a winning issue. I don't actually think anyone in Washington will do it, nor do I think the Georgia legislature would do it. I would be fine with us falling back in the fall and never springing forward and just stay on standard time. It's standard time. It's the way the world is supposed to work. Why don't we do that? And now that I do a morning show, I do have to acknowledge, I'm not a morning person. I resent every morning having to get up early to do this program. I love this program and I love y'all. But I'm not a morning. I've never been a morning person. I would rather stay up all night long and just plow through the show and then go to bed after it's over than go to sleep and have to wake up at 6 a.m. to do this program. I am not a morning person. I will never be a morning person. I realize that the early bird catches the worm, but then the late afternoon hawk catches the bird and eats it when he's fat and full of worms. I'm totally fine with being the late afternoon hawk that eats the early bird who caught the worms. I agree with my wife. Someone really needs to stop this time change stuff. It's time to cut it out. Now, when we come back, we got to get into Georgia news. And also, have you heard of thruples? Yes, my friends, thruples. We got to talk about thruples. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show across the state of Georgia. The phone number is 877-973-7425. That's 877-97 Eric. And I'm totally been discombobulated all of a sudden. So Will Davis at the Monroe County Reporter, he just sent me this story. I was not here last week and I missed the headline, and now I gotta deal with this story. This is this hell, this is why you need the local newspaper, folks. Here's the headline. County strains to solve explosive bathroom problem. I mean, that's worthy of a New York Post front page. Headless man in topless bar. County strains to solve explosive bathroom problem. Monroe County commissioners may take action to ensure that all dumps at their 13 recycling centers are orderly and scheduled. Commissioners will consider adding porta potties to some of the county's 13 convenience centers after some attendants complain that they're not able to make it to the restroom in time. Most of the county's 13 recycling centers are adjacent to fire stations, which have bathrooms, but one attendant who asked to remain anonymous said some of the fire stations are a good distance from the recycling area. He said most of the attendants are older retirees, and at least 2 haven't been able to make the trip in time and have had accidents. Oh my goodness. Oh my. The things that happen in local society. And so real world situation here. I was on city council in Macon for a term. It was the worst job of my life. It was a part-time job, but it was all consuming. I had just I got elected in 2007, and 2 years after I was on the job, CNN came calling, and within a year, radio came calling, and I had to actually leave about 4 or 5 months early. And I was missing a lot because of my TV career growing. It was kind of funny. I had replaced a guy who had to step down early because he got a career boost, and he had replaced a guy who had to step down early because of his career changes. And it was like my seat was the seat where something would happen in your career, and you couldn't do it at North Macon spot. But I was there for almost all of 4 years. And the stuff that you dealt with, it was an eye-opening experience for me. Local politics is far nastier than national politics because everybody knows everybody, and they can just be ruthless. And one of the things, if you live in Macon, if you live really anywhere in the South, everything can be about race. We literally argued one night over changing suppliers in City Hall, and it turned into a race issue because we could get everything, toilet paper and everything cheaper, but the person we'd be getting it from was a white guy who didn't live. It was basically a company, not an individual reseller, and the reseller we had was African-American, charged a little more, and it became a race thing. We're just trying to save money. Lost that fight, by the way. And then there was an issue where occasionally you could find common ground. And let me explain one of these issues where you sometimes find common ground. Again, I was on city council. City councils in Georgia are nonpartisan, except at the time Macon. Macon was the only city council in Georgia that had a partisan city council, and we should acknowledge why. In the 1980s, Republicans were fairly dominant, and Republicans pushed for a partisan city council. The legislature allowed them to do it so that people couldn't vote Republican. Well, eventually the demographics changed and it worked against them. And you couldn't be a Republican and get elected in most of the city. And there was never a partisan issue. To this day, I do not know what the partisan position is on trash collection. I have no idea. I know philosophically there were those of us who were conservative and thought, we could privatize this and save some money. And there were progressives like, no, we should have everybody on the government payroll. Essentially, in local government, what you find is that oftentimes local government operates as a welfare program where people who are on city council can get friends jobs who otherwise couldn't get jobs, and they work for the city or the county. And that's just a statement of fact. Don't hate me for pointing it out. But there were a lot of times where you found common ground, and let me just speak about one of those real quick. So some of you around the state, particularly if you're involved in black elected politics, you probably know who Elaine Lucas is. David Lucas, you probably know. David Lucas is in the state Senate, and Elaine Lucas, his wife, is on now the county commission in Bibb County. Had been on the city council with me. And she and I rarely saw eye to eye on anything. In fact, she would refer to me as Erick KKK Erickson. I personally found it funny. But occasionally, we would find common ground. And there is one particular area where she changed my mind for the better. As a conservative, I really tend to oppose government spending on outside programs, rely on private donations. And Elaine Lucas was a massive advocate of the Booker T. Washington. It was a after school facility, and it was actually the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, I think, had some involvement with it. It's been a few years now, but essentially it was an after school program and facility where kids in a local neighborhood could go and hang out while their parents were at work, and the city was paying to keep this place open. And my natural inclination as a small government conservative libertarian is, why are we paying for a place where kids can go in the afternoon? They can go home. And Elaine Lucas was dogmatically in favor of supporting this fund. And she convinced me. And she was, to this day, I am convinced, as much as she and I disagree on stuff, she's 1,000% right on this. And to my conservative friends who have come after me in the city, I've defended this program. The amount of crime, and there was the local police chief, Elaine Lucas actually insisted that I talk to the local police chief at the time, Mike Davis, I think his name was at the time. And he pointed out to me the crime statistics. When you don't have an after-school facility for kids to go to in certain neighborhoods where moms and dads are gone, and in particular neighborhoods where there may be a gang problem, those kids are going to go somewhere. They're not going to stay home. And oftentimes in these neighborhoods, they don't have an Xbox or something to entertain themselves with. They're going to go outside. They're going to find people. They're going to find a gang, or they're going to find trouble. And it is actually really remarkable, and particularly with the local crime stats in Macon, Georgia, there was a time where the center had to be closed because of budget cuts. And it was a night and day difference between crime rates in that neighborhood. You leave the center open, crime goes down, and police resources can go elsewhere. And to her absolute credit, Elaine Lucas convinced me of that. She and I may agree on nothing, but I will 1,000% defend her on those sorts of after-school programs, because she had the statistics to convince a guy like me that it actually causes crime to go down. And sometimes you gotta think about those things. Another issue. The only reason I ran for office was human trafficking. It is an issue I care about. It is an issue many people on the left treat as some sort of moral outrage that really there's nothing to be about. But I had to go downtown one night to Fox 24 in Macon to be on TV. I lived in Midtown Macon, Rosa Taylor Elementary School, that neighborhood, Thornwood Drive, and drove to downtown Macon. And I kid you not, it was it was not 5 miles. It couldn't be 5 miles. Now I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna figure this out. Let's see. GT. Let's see. Yep, it is. The total distance is, it's exactly 5 miles. 5.2. Yep. 5.5 miles from my old house to Fox 24 in downtown Macon. I passed 10 massage parlors that were wide open with traffic. Now, we got these Asian-themed massage parlors all over Georgia. And I just happened to know, this was before I was on city council, I happened to notice that there are these Asian-themed massage parlors, and there's never anyone there. Well, I'm never out of my house after 10 o'clock at night, and here they wanted me on the 11 o'clock news to talk about something in politics. And so I drive downtown 5.5 miles, and there are 10 of these, and all of them have people standing outside. Like, what the is going on? A lady up in Gwinnett County was dealing with this problem. At the time, I was writing a little blog and also writing at Red State, and I happened to put up something about this issue. I was like, what? Can someone explain this to me? I mean, I kind of assumed what was happening. Sure enough, this lady in Gwinnett County explained to me that a lot of these places are fronts for prostitution. And in many cases, there's a lot of signs that they're fronts for human trafficking. Now, 2000, I start stumbling or doing research online, and I stumble across a report Janet Reno had written when she was U.S. Attorney. It was actually put out by the Bush administration under John Ashcroft's name, George Bush's Attorney General, with credit to Janet Reno and the Clinton Justice Department for beginning the investigation. And one of the things they found was that you draw a circle, a line out, make a radius, a 30-minute radius from any military installation in the Southeast. And Macon is 30 minutes from Robins Air Force Base. What you will find is that within that 30-minute radius of driving, you will find Asian-themed massage parlors throughout the Southeast United States. And many of them are fronts for organized Asian crime. Many of them are human trafficking operations. And this, I was like, okay, this really is what's going on here. This woman in Gwinnett County, who, by the way, was getting death threats as she was campaigning on regulation in Gwinnett County, was shutting them down. She's getting a lot of death threats. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to deal with this in Macon if there's human trafficking going on. There were a number of police raids, and they could never prove that there was human trafficking, but there were lots of signs. For example, in some of these places, the girls slept in the business. There were mattresses everywhere. In some of these places, they had rooms without working light bulbs and stuff like that, all indicating human trafficking. Some of the girls were very scared to death to talk to the police, and oftentimes what happens is they tell these girls that their families in Korea or China or wherever they're being trafficked from are going to be murdered if they say anything, or that you can't trust the police because they're in on it, and you never know, they may report back to us and we'll kill you. It's horrific what happens to these girls. And so we started trying to figure out a way to deal with this, and I started educating myself. And one of the things that came up is one of the things these traffickers do and why so many of these places exist is there are people on city councils, on county commissions, and local government, in the police force who are landlords. And the traffickers who open these massage parlors rent from those people, because those people have a vested interest. Even if they don't really believe it, they'll turn a blind eye to it, and they will make sure not to allow human trafficking, or they will not to allow any sort of regulation that may clamp down on what's happening. It's actually a really organized, thoughtful scheme. And of course, the landlords are kind of ignorant. It's just a massage parlor. They say they're not engaged in human trafficking. You got no proof of it. And that's how they set up. Now, we were never able to completely wipe them out in Macon, but by and large, we got rid of most of them. Most of the ones that were the worst offenders are gone now. And what we did was something very novel, because sure enough, there were a couple of people prominent in the community who were the landlords. And they were the chief obstacles. And the thing they always said is, well, I mean, if it is prostitution, it's a victimless crime. Just flat out ignoring that it's human trafficking. It's a victimless crime. You can't do anything. And then you have these other people who want to throw up obstacles and say, we can't distract the police. We can't distract the police from doing their job. How can we distract the police from doing their job? So the way we did it in Macon, and again, I got to thank Elaine Lucas for actually helping me with this. And she originally was not supportive and ultimately was. When I got educated on the Booker T. Washington situation, she got educated on this, and we found common ground on this issue. That the way you do it is regulatory. So what we did is we went to all of the legitimate massage therapy places in town and said, what do you do? What are your common practices? It turns out that they have working light bulbs. The Asian theme massage parlors that we were fairly certain were fronts for human trafficking, many times they have rooms where there are no working lights. The legitimate businesses kept logs of customers. The illegitimate businesses did not. The legitimate businesses did not have people sleeping at the work location. The illegitimate businesses did. So instead of using the police to crack down on human trafficking, we used business inspection. You want your business license, got to make sure you don't have mattresses on the floor in these places. You have working light bulbs in all the rooms. You have logs of customers that are inspectable you would be amazed how many of them packed up and disappeared overnight once it was passed. They did not want us making them have lists of customers. They did not want us inspecting to make sure that there were light bulbs in all the building, in all the rooms. They didn't want us coming in and saying, why are all these mattresses here? They didn't want any of that stuff. And so instead of using law enforcement to crack down, and again, one of the big arguments was, well, we can't do this. We'll distract law enforcement from legitimate crime. Well, we're not doing that. We got business inspectors who have a lot of time on their hands. Let's get them to do this. And by the way, we're going to apply a tax, and it'll increase your revenue. Oh, they loved that, except for the people who were actively renting to these businesses. They were the only ones who remained opposed, and it passed. And it was very interesting. It wasn't conservative, and it wasn't liberal. It wasn't Republican. It wasn't Democrat. There's a legitimate issue, and we found a very creative way to solve the problem. With me, a small government, anti-regulation conservative, saying, this is a great use of government regulatory force. And it worked actually pretty doggone well. It really did. And again, it's one of those things where occasionally you can find common ground on the left and the right on an issue. Unfortunately, nowadays, because so many people care about this issue on the right, it seems like there is this contrarianism growing on the left saying, oh, human trafficking is not really a big deal. Actually, it is a very big deal still in this country.
You can follow Erick around social media at
A friend of mine just sent this to me, and I endorse the sentiment. Some woman's tweet, it says, I want to be super fit. I do. But I can't just sit here with potential six-pack abs knowing small businesses and restaurants are struggling right now. It's why I don't cook my own healthy food and must order another cheeseburger today. We're in this together. Yes, that's it. Y'all, here's one thing I'm learning in everything I'm doing right now. Trying to lose weight, and it sucks. But shrimp is super high in protein, and so is chicken, and I can grill tons of food and just eat lots of meat. Essentially being a carnivore, and it's all reduction in calories. It's not actually keto. You know why keto is just you're reducing your calories. All these diet crazes are all really about reducing even intermittent fasting. It's about reducing the number of calories you're consuming in a day. That's what it really is. And if you eat a lot of protein, it keeps you full. So it does better. I'm totally down with this idea. I'm totally down with it. It's remarkable how much meat I can eat and lose weight. Slowly but surely. Although this weekend I may blow it. Nonetheless, this hour of the program, sponsored by First Liberty Building and Loan, firstlibertyga.com. If you are in charge of the financial decisions for a business and you need access to capital, you need loans, you name it, six figures and higher, go to firstlibertyga.com. One of our longest sponsors of this program. I thank them tremendously. A great way to help us is to support our sponsors. You can do that in part by going to firstlibertyga.com. If your business needs access to loans, capital, they want to help your business get yes. A lot of banks are telling you no. When we come back, we need to discuss guns in Georgia. Lucy McBath is putting forward a gun control measure with the Democrats in charge of Congress and a Democratic president. She wants to start restricting your guns. I don't know that she can. We will see. There's the issue of the filibuster in the Senate. But also, there's a disturbing story about a potential teen shooter in Atlanta that you probably need to know about. And in your neighborhood, in your community, there may be something like this going on. A lot of it seems to be mental health related right now with so many schools shut down. We will talk about that. And I got to give a shout out to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's doing something we should all be applauding. We'll get into it when we come back right here on the Erick Erickson Show. Take your phone calls as well, 877-973-7425. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Actually, I'll get to Lucy McBath, but I want to bring up this story briefly. Maybe not exactly briefly. This is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. A Cobb County teenager is behind bars after police discovered a pipe bomb, several guns, and more than 900 doses of LSD in his home, authorities said. The drugs and weapons were seized Monday during a search of Dylan Chapman's home along Crabapple Place in West Cobb, according to the 18-year-old's arrest warrant. The search was conducted by the Marietta Cobb Smyrna Organized Crime Unit with the assistance of the FBI. According to the teen's warrant, police also discovered 16 fluid ounces of THC syrup, 7 THC vape cartridges, and several guns, including 3 AK-47s and an AR-15 found in his bedroom. Authorities have not said what led to the search or what Chapman planned to do with the homemade pipe bomb discovered in his home. Said accused did procure materials, assemble and possess a pipe bomb located during the execution of a search warrant at his residence. The teen's warrant reads, it wasn't immediately clear Wednesday where Chapman may have gotten the explosives or why the FBI was asked to assist in the search, which occurred in a quiet neighborhood near Vaughn Elementary School. An FBI spokesman referred all questions to the Cobb County Police. A spokesman for the Cobb County School District confirmed Chapman is a student, but declined to say which high school he attended or what grade he's in. Chapman faces more than 13 drug and weapons charges in connection with the search, all of which are felonies. He remains held at the Cobb County Jail on Wednesday. Wow. This story is actually from a week ago. I'm only just now hearing about it. A buddy of mine texted it to me last night. Now, there are all sorts of different things to take here, but one of the issues is parental neglect. Where are the parents? What are the parents doing? And there's a tie-in story, and I was going to get to this story later, and I may get back to this story. But let me just spend a moment in this, and I really do want to get back to this in the next hour, and I need to deal with Lucy McBath. But let me deal with this. There's a story. Barry Weiss at City Journal has a piece of hers. Barry Weiss. I've been on HBO with her before. She's great. And she is really focusing on the woke. She was a New York Times columnist who was chased away by the Boko Haram contingent at the New York Times. And she has a piece, The Miseducation of America's Elites. And she's interviewing parents of an elite private school, Harvard Westlake in Los Angeles. Rupert Murdoch's daughter-in-law is on the board of the school. Warren Buffett's right hand, Charlie Munger's on the board of the school. It's $40,000 a year. The school has gone all in on an anti-racist woke agenda. It has become a training ground for the Boko Haram terrorists who silence people around the country. And these people are sending their kids there, and the kids themselves live in fear that they might be exposed as a capitalist. A capitalist. She writes, these are America's elites, the families who can afford to pay some $50,000 a year for their children to be groomed, for the eating clubs of Princeton and the secret societies of Yale, the glide path to become masters of the universe. The ideas and values instilled in them influence the rest of us. This is not the only reason the story matters. These schools are called prep schools because they prepare America's princelings to take their place in what we're told is our meritocracy. Nothing happens at a top prep school that is not a mirror of what happens at an elite college. What does it say about the current state of the meritocracy, then, that it wants kids fluent in critical race theory and white fragility, even if such knowledge comes at the expense of Shakespeare? The colleges want children, customers that are going to be pre-aligned to certain ideologies that originally came out of those colleges, says a STEM teacher at one of New York's prestigious prep schools. I call it woke weaning, and that's the product schools like mine are offering. At Harvard Westlake, you're no longer allowed to talk about Isaac Newton's laws of physics. Isaac Newton is too white, and whiteness must be decentered from physics. So at Harvard Westlake, one of the elite private schools in the United States, you can't talk about Newtonian physics. Now, what is Newtonian physics? Well, you know Newtonian physics. What goes up must come down. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Things in motion tend to stay in motion unless a force is applied to them, and things at rest tend to stay at rest unless a force is applied to them. Inertia, gravity, action and reaction. You know those things. Those are Newton's three laws of physics. You're now supposed to refer to them as the three fundamental laws. You can't refer to them as Newton's laws because we have to de-white physics. This is at an elite private school. Here's one of my other favorites. Power in America now comes from speaking woke, a highly complex and ever-evolving language. The Grace Church School in Manhattan, for example, offers a 12-page guide to inclusive language, which discourages people from using the word parents, folks is preferred, or from asking questions like, what religion are you? When asked for comment, Reverend Robert M. Penoyer II, Robert M. Penoyer II, of course, the assistant head of school, replied, Grace is an Episcopal school. Of course it's an Episcopal school. I could have told you it was an Episcopal school. If it's called Grace Church and it's woke, it's got to be Episcopal. Either that or it's got to be PCUSA. PCUSA, putting heresy into Presbyterianism since the 1970s. Of course it's Episcopal. My goodness gracious. This is happening. And now let me get back to this teen shooter. Parents are the most fundamental influencer of a child's behavior. We have parents sending their kids to these elite private schools, and the kids can't speak up in class and reveal themselves as capitalists, but they are, and they're seething with resentment at the elite. And this kid, who knows where his parents are, and he's a would-be bomber and drug dealer. Parents help direct their kids' lives and path in life, their path in life. And I'm mindful about this with my kids, and maybe not as much as I should. I don't know that I push my kids as hard as I should. Sometimes you can push your kids too hard. It's one of the things that I've learned. Parenting is great. I've got a buddy of mine. His wife is pregnant with their first child, and he is so excited. I mean, he is beside himself with excitement. Being a dad is an overwhelming responsibility. And one of the things society does these days is it kind of degrades dads. It degrades fatherhood. Fathers are the butts of jokes. Fathers are the punchline in commercials. There's there's McDermott's. I can't remember now their name. Out at Biola University, it's a father and son have done a lot of research into pornography. I mentioned this on the program before. The number one indicator of whether or not a boy, will refuse to engage with pornography is whether his father has talked to him about it. A boy whose father has explained to him that much of what you see online are drugged up girls, oftentimes against their will. A lot of it is human trafficking. Much of it is girls who believe they have to do this or they've been coerced into doing this. If your father points that out to you, you're less inclined to engage. Do you know the average boy now sees pornography when he's 9 years old? In some cases, it's younger than that. I read a story the other day about a kid whose parents were out of the house and his older brother started showing him pornography when he was 6 years old. By the time he was 10, it's about the only thing he encountered online. He sought it out. And he is now in high school and in therapy. We shape our kids, and there's something going on in society. I've been planning. I've got a note to myself. I'm doing the Good Friday show. I always do the Good Friday show. Some people hate it. I feel obliged to do it. Focus on the higher order topics. Just one day a year, kind of like a tithe in radio. And there's something clearly going on spiritually in society right now. Take Beth Moore. Listen, I don't care if you know who Beth Moore is or if you don't. And if you do, I don't care whether you like her or you don't. Beth Moore has had a meaningful, positive impact on my wife's faith journey and my daughter's. She's been a friend to us. And I say that as someone who doesn't necessarily agree with her on things. I don't want to delve into the disagreements, but I don't see eye to eye with her on some stuff, including the role of women in the church. She's far more complementarian than I think people want to acknowledge, but she's not as much as as I am. But inarguably, her women's ministry has done good work for decades. And she's decided to leave the Southern Baptist Convention. I grew up Southern Baptist. I care deeply for the Southern Baptist Church. I am in the PCA church right now, and frankly, I need to do a better job of having a relationship with my church. Particularly, there's stuff coming in my life where I know I need a more grounded relationship with men in the church. And your spiritual life matters, but there is something going on, and I can only call it spiritual. Demonic, maybe. The amount of churches and church denominations that are inwardly fighting with each other all of a sudden. And oftentimes the fights are minor things that have suddenly become life or death issues of heresy and orthodoxy, and when they're really not. People feeling uncomfortable in churches leaving, churches fighting over racial reconciliation, people embracing critical theory, people who don't want to talk about tough topics saying, well, you must be Marxist if you want to talk about it. The whole thing is bizarre. There's something in the spiritual waters right now, and it's also impacting families. You got an 18-year-old in Cobb County with a pipe bomb, guns, 900 doses of LSD, and a lot of marijuana, including 3 AK-47s and an AR-15 in his bedroom. Where are his parents? And then you have parents in Los Angeles and New York sending their kids to elite private schools, convinced that their way to their kids' success is by giving them the most expensive education, not the best, but the most expensive. And I got to tell you, we got some private schools here in Macon. I got in trouble with some friends of mine for making a passive-aggressive comment about my kid's old school. We had issues, but that school has rejected wokeism as best it can in the current culture compared to some of the other really expensive private schools. I mean, my goodness, some of the private schools around where I live have gone all into woke, and none of them are tied to a church. This one, my kid's old school, much as I've had some issues with it, this school is giving kids a brilliant education for half the cost of the school in Los Angeles, and its kids they're getting into good schools. The kids in my school are getting into good schools, and they go to a real hardcore Christian. My kid is having to memorize Isaiah 40, not a verse, the whole thing. For those of you who have no idea, Isaiah 40 is 31 verses long. And he's got to memorize the whole thing. Comfort, my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem, and on it goes. For 31 verses, he's got to memorize that, and he's got to memorize the catechism. And the kids in the school are getting a good program because the parents are focused and engaged. They're focused on the whole child, the spirit and the mind. And a lot of parents aren't focused on the spirit. A lot of parents aren't even focused on the mind and the body of kids these days. There's something in the water. And all I can think is with these two stories, I see them as related, and maybe I shouldn't. But on one hand, you've got the parents sending their kids to these elite schools because they got to get them into Harvard and Yale because they got to make them the masters of the universe. At what expense to their soul? They will inherit the world and lose their soul. And it's remarkable that they feel they got to spend $40,000 to send them to this school so they get the best education from the Ivy League, when you can get a fine education from a state school and make 6 and 7 figures as a result. And then on the other hand, you got a kid who's 18 years old selling drugs, stockpiling guns and bombs in his house. And what have his parents done to him? Sometimes you push your kids too hard. Sometimes you don't push them enough. Sometimes you abandon them. There's something spiritual in the water right now. And it's not just in this country, globally. There's something malevolent in the spiritual water right now. And it just seems to be picking up steam. And it's affecting individuals and families and really taking advantage of lockdown and pushing kids towards destructive behavior and isolation. And churches aren't open to be able to deal with it. It seems like the sooner we get people back into society and engaging with people again and being able to go back to church, the better we will be.
You're listening to the Erick Erickson Show, the perfect blend of...
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. At the bottom of the next hour, that would be 11:30, really 11:35 when we come back. Chris Rufo is going to join me. He's been writing about critical theory for a while, pointing out its problems as Boko Haram spreads across the country. Oh, what's the guy's name? What is it? Winston Marshall. I like Mumford. I didn't realize people hated Mumford and Sons. I've always liked Mumford and Sons. I don't like their newer stuff. Their older stuff is much better. I remember my buddy Steven here in town was asking me years ago now what was a band that he should pay attention to. I said Mumford and Sons. This was well before anyone knew anything about them. I was paying attention to them. I pride myself in discovering good bands early. And Mumford and Sons, I had been listening to them before they ever made it big, and I liked them. Their newer stuff I don't really like. They kind of lost their sound. They need to get back to it. But Winston Marshall is in the band, and Winston Marshall has had to release an abject apology for daring to praise, what is it, Andy, what's his last name? NGO, no, Go, Andy Go, I can't remember how you pronounce his last name, but he wrote the book on, essentially wrote the book on Boko Haram, wrote the book on the rising wokes and the problem with the wokes, and he's now had to, Winston Marshall has, he tweeted thanking Andy for his bravery in writing the book. And Boko Haram came for him to destroy his life. And Winston Marshall in the band has had to now apologize and is announcing that he is stepping aside from the band. Now, the reason he's stepping aside from the band is undoubtedly because he was pressured to do so. He's the guitarist. Now, he's not going to be hurt. I didn't realize his father is the head of a private equity group and is a multimillionaire, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So he'll be fine. But he's had to release a groveling apology for daring to offend the wokes. His apology says, and listen, this is woke speak. Over the past few days, I have come to better understand the pain I've caused by the book I endorsed. I have offended not only a lot of people I don't know, but also those closest to me, including my bandmates, and for that I am truly sorry. As a result of my actions, I am taking time away from the band to examine my blind spots. For now, please know that I realize how my endorsements have the potential to be viewed as approvals of hateful, divisive behavior. I apologize, as this was not at all my intention. This is the grovelly woke speak that we've come accustomed to. Now, I got a couple of quick points to make. One, the reaction from the right has been, screw you, coward, for doing this. And the reaction from the wokes is, it doesn't matter, we're going to destroy you anyway. We're in uncharted territory, and I think those of us who don't like the wokes need to offer people like this grace. He knows they have the power to destroy his life. He had to leave the band he's been a member of since its founding because of the wokes. They're coming for all of us. And I think throwing people under the bus for not being brave enough to stand up to him shows no grace to these people. The wokes have the power to destroy their life, and they're trying to destroy this guy's life. Sure, he'll be fine because he's a multimillionaire. But it's a dangerous precedent to throw him under the bus for doing what they can to mitigate the damage. We've all got to do better in this front. We all have to do better. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. At the bottom of the hour, Chris Rufo is going to join me. He has really been one of the leading writers in the nation on critical theory and what's going on. He's also a documentarian. America Lost is a PBS documentary that explores life in 3 forgotten American cities. He's really been focused on some of the problems that are out there in the country now with the left. He covers critical theory, homelessness, addiction, crime, other afflictions. His investigative reporting led President Trump to issue the executive order banning critical race theory from the federal government. He's worked at the Heritage Foundation and others. Really excited to talk to him. Lives in Seattle with his wife and kids. There's a relevant story, and I suppose I can get into this with him. Bari Weiss has written about it. I mentioned in the last hour about this story, and I'll get into that some, but I want to go back to this real quick. I mentioned in the last hour, Winston Marshall is the guitarist for Mumford & Sons. He endorsed a book about Antifa and its radical plan to destroy democracy. He tweeted out, at least, finally had time to read the book and referred to the author as a brave man. The left hates Andy Ngo, and I may be mispronouncing his last name. They hate him. They call him a grifter. They think that he tries to incite harassment. The guy shows up at left-wing rallies and documents what they're saying and tweets the stuff out. He's been very thorough and detailed, and they hate him. There's a propaganda effort against him. And Winston Marshall read his book and liked it and tweeted out about it. Now, Winston Marshall, you should know, is the son of a multimillionaire multiple times over. His father is a private equity guy in Britain, has lots and lots of money. He'll be fine financially. But he's had to leave Mumford & Sons, the band, and I'm going to do a public apology in the standard woke speak of the day, the critical theory-ish speak that you hear these days. Over the past few days, I've come to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. I've offended not only a lot of people I don't know, but also those closest to me, including my bandmates, and for that I'm truly sorry. As a result of my actions, I'm taking time away from the band to examine my blind spots. For now, please know that I realize how my endorsements have the potential to be viewed as approvals of hateful, divisive behavior. I apologize, as this was not at all my intention. Now, I suspect someone wrote that for him, a publicist, because most people don't know how to speak that way unless they've had it shoved up their backside by a woke. But there are a couple of points I really want to make here, and I hope everyone will listen to what I'm about to say. The reaction from Boko Haram, the terrorist wokes of this nation, the social justice warriors, to Winston Marshall apologize for having read a book and liked it, is screw you, we're going to destroy you anyway. We don't believe you. We're not accepting your apology. You're not allowed back in the town square. And if you come back to Mumford & Sons, we're going to destroy them too. That's the reaction from the wokes. The reaction from conservatives is screw you, you coward. How could you apologize to these people? All you did was read a book. And it's an understandable reaction, but here's the thing. You're not walking in this guy's shoes. Yes, his daddy is wealthy and he'll be fine, but this is a guy who committed himself to a band and has been in the band for more than a decade. And the wokes are destroying that from him. Of course he's going to say whatever he needs to say to not be a martyr and keep his relationship with his band, which he's not going to be able to do now, even with his time off. I don't think the reaction from conservatives should be, you coward. I think you got to show this guy some grace. Listen, I'm in a position where I can say stuff many of you can't. I can ridicule the wokes as Boko Haram, like the Islamic fundamentalist terrorist group Boko Haram. I can ridicule them, and I know they're going to come for me at some point. They've tried before. They've tried to come against me for just being an Orthodox Christian and saying I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. You know the number of people in radio, in conservative talk radio, you would be amazed at the number of people who told me you can't say that anymore. And I do, and maybe it'll hurt me. But I believe it. I shouldn't tell you anything I don't believe, and I shouldn't keep from you the things I do believe. And yet, increasingly, people are having to do it, including guys like this. He doesn't want to give up his career. He doesn't want to leave his bandmates, and yet he's having to do it. And I just don't think the reaction from the right should be, screw you, coward. How could you back down? How could you apologize for reading the book? I think you got to have some level of understanding and grace. It's really easy for us to say that when the mob hasn't come for you. Let me tell you about one of my experiences with the mob coming for me. When I was still a practicing lawyer, Cindy Sheehan, it's kind of funny, a buddy of mine mentioned her today, that Greta Thunberg has come for Joe Biden. Remember her? Well, he said that she was going to be Cindy Sheehan. You remember Cindy Sheehan? Cindy Sheehan was a woman in Texas whose son had died in the military when Bush was president. And she decided to go protest at his Crawford Ranch, and the media gave her extraordinary attention. And the woman was clearly not right in the head, clearly had issues, clearly was suffering the loss of her son. And the media used her grief to beat up George W. Bush. And I said something, I can't even remember exactly what I wrote, that she was an attention monger carrying her dead son's memory to George Bush's doorstep. And the media loved it. I called her an attention whore. 2005. I don't think I was even 30 years old at the time. And the wokes, the precursor to the wokes, the radical anti-war leftists, they came for me. They put up my law firm's phone number online and overwhelmed the law firm with calls to have me fired. Now, I was very fortunate that the managing partner of the law firm agreed with me. But I still had to apologize to a degree. I did not have to do a groveling one. We had people call our house. They found our phone number. They filled up our voicemail with just nasty stuff my wife found. And all you want to do is make it stop. You want the harassment to stop. If it hasn't happened to you, you can puff up your chest and say, "You coward! I can't believe you folded those people." I can guarantee you what's happened to this guy. I can guarantee, because it's happened to me multiple times. They're not just coming for him, they're coming for his family. It's like Kaiser Sose. They're harassing this guy's family right now. I guarantee you they're coming after his dad and his dad's private equity firm. They're coming after his mother, and they're coming after any of his siblings. They found their phone numbers, and they're calling them. They found his phone number. I guarantee you they found his phone number. They're calling him. They're overwhelming email systems. They're going after his bandmates. I know they're doing this because they've done it to me and my family. I've seen them do this. So I do not think that your reaction as a conservative to this guy, Winston Marshall, apologizing, I don't think your reaction should be to ridicule him. I don't think your reaction should be to call him a coward. Because it's never happened to you. And if you haven't walked in this guy's shoes, you actually should count yourself lucky. I see friends of mine online ridiculing Winston Marshall for his groveling apology. And it is a groveling, pathetic apology. And when I read it, I read, but by the grace of God, there go I. I read a guy who just wants the phones to stop ringing and wants the emails to stop coming. I read the apology of a guy whose mom is probably getting rape threats, whose girlfriend is probably getting rape threats. Y'all don't understand. It's an abstract, by the way, even for the people who defend the woke. Say, it's just an apology. He shouldn't be endorsing this. He's alienating people. They don't realize what's going on either. Or maybe they do and they don't care. And you have a media complex and an entertainment complex aligned with Boko Haram. They have the power to destroy this guy. They can't kill him, but they can destroy him. They can make him radioactive so he can never be in a band again, a band he's devoted his life to. I have seen firsthand what these people do. Do you know I've had pornographic material sent to my house for a long time? My kids couldn't check the mailbox. Someone subscribed me to inappropriate material. We've had sex toys sent to our house. We've had people pull into our driveway, gay rights activists. Heck, I've had Trump supporters, when I said I wouldn't support the president in 2016, show up on my doorstep to threaten me. My kids have been targeted. My wife has been targeted. I've been targeted by the far left. I get why this guy's apologizing. I get that I'm in a position and have a microphone to speak for people who can't speak. I get that I can say things here about the social justice warrior left and faith and Christianity and stuff that y'all can't say in your jobs because you would probably get fired. And here comes this guy, his daddy's almost a billionaire and he's in a band and he's famous and you're pissed that he surrendered. And all I can do is tell you, offer him more grace than what the wokes are offering, because there but by the grace of God go you and me. I assure you that the wokes are ruthless. And some of them, I think if they could kill, they would. I really do believe that. And again, I won't tell you something I don't believe. I think the very, very tiny, small fraction, the James Hodgkinson wokes, who would attempt a mass assassination on Republican members of Congress, those people exist out there. They're nuts. You got them on the right and you got them on the left. And the media only wants to focus on the ones on the right, but they're on the left as well. And they'll do whatever it takes to shut up anyone who isn't woke, particularly a celebrity who's got a pulpit, who can recommend a book like Andy's. So show grace if you're a conservative. Don't attack this guy as a coward. You don't know what he's going through. I have seen it. And I've seen a mild case of it. This guy's got a way bigger platform than me. But it is also something that we're going to have to deal with, and it's only going to get worse. The only way is for us to not play their game. But he's not really in a position where he can avoid playing their game because he's got bandmates. He's got a music production company. He's got all of those things. And those people, they've all got to not play the game. And the fans have not got to not play the game. With me, I'm a conservative talk radio show host. You and I, we've got license to disagree with each other internally. And I can say stuff that makes the wokes mad, and y'all aren't going to leave me for doing it. You may leave me if I make you mad. Some of y'all left because you got mad at me over the election. But we get a lot more latitude on our side. I'm just telling you, show people grace who are going through this stuff. Don't attack them, because I've seen it and you haven't. I have lived it and you haven't. And it's awful what they will do to you and your family and your loved ones and your business colleagues and the like. And I read this statement from this guy and I say the publicist did that, and all he wants is for the phone calls and the emails and the death threats to go away and to save his relationship with his band. And he's not going to save any of it. Fame is fleeting. People want to hold on to it as long as they can. And I get that too. But the wokes are out to destroy everybody. And we got to show some grace for people who are in the process of being destroyed.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson.
Hello there, it's Erick Erickson here. You've got about 30 minutes to text the word recipe to 33777 and sign up before I send out my rib recipe. It's a good one, too, if you got a smoker, big green egg, a pellet grill, what have you. Right now, speaking of ribs, I got some from Omaha Steaks last weekend, and I smoked them on Monday, and that's the recipe I'll send out. Omaha Steaks it's got seafood, it's got poultry, it's got pork, it's got beef. They age their beef 21 days. That's where the magic happens. The flavor is great. Their bacon wrap fillets have been a staple in my house for years. It's really kind of cool, actually, to be able to endorse Omaha Steaks, having been a customer of theirs for so long. And right now, if you go to omahasteaks.com and you put Georgia in the search bar, you'll see their Butcher's Bestsellers package, and it's got their butcher cut fillets, it's got burgers, it's got kielbasa sausages, it's got caramel apple tartlets. If you put Georgia in the search bar and you order it right now, you're going to get an additional 4 chicken breasts and 4 more burgers for free with this package. It's a great deal. You can't go to the grocery store and buy everything in the Omaha Steaks package for the same price, nor will you get the same quality. It's great quality, delivered to your door, restaurant quality meal, throw it on the grill, put it in your oven. It's great. And check out their baby back ribs. They're actually really good quality. We've thoroughly enjoyed them. Go to omahasteaks.com. Put Georgia in the search bar, Georgia. But get the Butcher's Bestseller package. It really is good. And they got so much more there as well. I'm a big fan of their sliced chicken breast. They have individually sliced chicken breasts for stir fry. They're frozen. You can thaw one out. Make yourself a stir fry. Great portion control. omahasteaks.com. Put Georgia in the search bar. Now, let us go to the phones. I got Sama in Athens. You're going to be up next. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I love your show, Eric, and I listen to it every day.
Thank you.
And it seems that your show doesn't believe in cancel culture, because this is the only show always allow me to speak on the air with your great listeners.
Absolutely.
And yes, sir. Today, I would like to share with you and with the great listener that the enemies of this country, there is something I did learn years ago in Egypt. They said, America, it's impossible to take over because for 2 reasons. First, land-wise and sea-wise and the way the geographical, layout of America. Number 2, the amount of guns in the hand of the citizen. So the enemies of this country has to find a plan B to take over America. And this is what is happening, using the propaganda news and fake news and spread all this of false information like discrimination, social injustice, and all this inequality. It's just a lazy people spreading false information. If you really want to see discrimination, go to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
There is a chainsaw
Yeah.
waiting for you. So the propaganda mule on campus, in universities, on campus, is spreading all this information to spread hate and fight between all the segments of the
absolutely. Go ahead.
Yes, my question, do you think it will solve the problem if the minorities became majority? So what's going to happen if the minorities became a majority? So we have to work on the other side of it.
Well, so it's funny you should say that. There's actually, let me let you go there, but let me answer this quick. Thanks for the phone call. There's actually a lot of data that Black and Hispanic voters are really worried about cancel culture themselves and really are culturally conservative when it comes to this stuff. Russell and Macon, I got about a minute left. I wanted to get you there.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I hear a lot of people talking about the cancel culture and the woke. I would like to know who they actually are, like what organizations are they associated with, and because I would like to put these organizations on blast and kind of turn the table.
So, it's somewhat disorganized on the left. You get the Twitter mobs going, and they take on a life of their own. Now, there are some organizations, Media Matters for America is one that tries to engage in cancel culture against conservatives. You got MSNBC, of course, does it. Teen Vogue, the publication, does it. There's a group called Sleeping Giants, I think it is, that tries to run boycotts against conservative talk radio. They've targeted me in the past, trying to harass my radio affiliates and the like. There are a number of these groups out there that engage in it, but oftentimes it's crazy people on social media spreading rumors, getting people worked up, and they attack. It's a blue check mark celebrity who joins forces with other blue check mark celebrities. It's a cultural phenomenon happening right now. Crazy people on the left with blue check marks. Welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC. You can always go to ewerickson.com or find me on social media at ewerickson. And remember, I will be sending out my rib recipe by multiple requests. You have to text the word recipe to 33777 to get it. I have spent, it seems like almost every day now on this program, we have had to talk in some way about critical theory and what it is, and the wokes and Woko Haram and the American college and elite private school campuses that have become terrorist training grounds for the wokes to shut down society. Well, there is someone on this planet who has done way more work than I will ever do on this topic and knows it well. Christopher Rufo is a writer, filmmaker. He's the director of the Discovery Institute Center for Wealth and Poverty, lives in what unfortunately I have learned is considered a happier place to live than Atlanta, Georgia. And that would be Seattle, Washington, a place I have never been and hope to go to. He's joining me by phone. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so I got to start with this because I got a guy who works for me. His name is Philip, and you can call him short, but don't ever call him Phil. So now, are you Christopher or Chris?
Christopher is fine, but I won't get mad either way.
Excellent. All right. So I have been reading your tweets, and they started coming across my timeline regularly from other people. Like, I need to follow this guy, and then started looking into your writings and things you've done. Really impressed with how you've been able to articulate what's going on in the country, and wanted to get you on here. And just to start, I talk about things like critical race theory all the time. And wanted to see if you can kind of explain to people what exactly this phenomenon and this thing is.
Yeah, critical race theory is an academic discipline that started in the 1960s as critical theory, then in the 1990s became critical race theory. And in the American context, the idea is that the United States is a fundamentally and irredeemably racist country, and that all of America's institutions, everything from our legal system, our Constitution, our social institutions, they preach the values of equality and freedom, but in reality, they serve to kind of support a white supremacist society. And the critical race theorists basically say you need to look under the cover, under the kind of cover of goodness into American evil, and understand that this is how the society works, and this society must be subverted.
And if they're subverting study, and often I find it deeply ironic that some of the largest proponents of this are white elite private schools that don't actually want to do what they claim, and yet it seems like it's a fundamentally destabilizing ideology if it were to get into widespread mainstream culture.
It is, and I think we're already seeing that. I mean, every day there's a kind of new rules, right? So, it's Dr. Seuss today, it's Dumbo tomorrow. And all of these things are kind of sensational media stories, but I think it's important for people to look below the surface. Those are kind of distractions in a lot of ways. But below the surface, the kind of principles at play here are very simple. They want to demolish all of the old cultural references that provide us a common reference point. So all Americans, regardless of race, look at Dr. Seuss and read Dr. Seuss and enjoy it. The idea is to destroy that common frame of reference so then they can replace it with ideological material. So like there's a book called Anti-Racist Baby, and it's a book that they're trying to say you should read to your children at very young ages in order to indoctrinate them in their ideology of anti-racism. And these two things go hand in hand. When you erase the old, you can bring in your own new replacements, and they're going to be woker and woker and woker.
So now I'm working on my MDiv in seminary, and one of the things I talk about a lot on this program is how the secularism has taken on all of the trappings of religion with various denominations within it, be it environmentalism or the like, and wokeism and the wokes. It seems there's a liturgy, there's orthodoxy, heterodoxy. It seems to have taken on a religion for a lot of people who don't have real religion in their lives.
I think that's right. And even worse than that, it's actually starting to come into many American churches. This is something that when I first started reporting came to me as a great shock. But a lot of people said, hey, our church, our Baptist church, our other Protestant churches are now bringing in critical race theory into their programming. So I think that while you're right, that it certainly has the aspects of a religion, it's not going to bound itself to its own people, its own followers. It's really a kind of ideological program that seeks to extend itself in every institution in the country. And I think if you want to understand how it sequenced, it first started in universities, then went into public agencies and bureaucracies, then into K-12 schools, now into churches and other private institutions. And I think for the moment they have the momentum, but I think that in the last 9 months, it started to get a little bit shaky. It started to slow down, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to reverse that trend.
Well, I'm glad to hear your optimism on it. I wanted to ask you what you thought of the prognosis is, and I'm getting more and more emails on a daily basis from progressives, maybe I should really say liberals for these people. They're of the left, but they're really horrified by what's going on, and it seems like there is some level of backlash to it growing.
There is, and I think that most people don't support, if you explain to them, hey, these are the fundamental tenets of this ideology, the strong majority of Americans would oppose them. The problem that we face, those of us who would like to kind of resist and deter this, is that this ideology is in the driver's seat of some very important institutions. All of the federal agencies and bureaucracies have adopted critical race theory. All of the universities and now most of the large K-12 school districts in the country have adopted it. So you have what I think is a state-created and state-sponsored ideology in all of those large bureaucratic institutions that is now attacking those kind of American middle-class, middle-of-the-road cultural values. And what I think conservatives need to understand is that it's not just that government is big and wasteful and inefficient. It's actually now that government has been weaponized with this ideology, and now it's being turned against taxpayers and the American people.
Well, and it also seems like much of the Fortune 500, I've actually got a friend of mine who reached out to me yesterday with a reading list of things he's got to read for his company now. And it's of course, it's the White Fragility book and on you go, how much of the Fortune 500. And to some degree, like he was saying, and I've kind of suspected this, that oftentimes it seems like within the rhetoric of the company, it's to inoculate themselves and not necessarily that they all believe it, although a growing number of them do.
I think that's right. Corporations are a big target for these folks. And I think how it works with corporations is pretty simple. You have people in HR or marketing or in the executive suite that say, okay, we have to do something. We don't want to get kind of publicly shamed and humiliated by the activists and the media. So we'll put out a reading list. We'll put out a training. We'll hire a diversity consultant. We'll do the kind of minimum steps in order to get a kind of immunity from criticism. I think most aren't true believers, but it also creates this dynamic, which I think is important. It's created a whole new crop of private diversity consultants, diversity trainers, anti-racism teachers that can now go to each corporation and essentially operate a shakedown where they say, hey, unless you want to be called a kind of racist company, I can actually get you out of that. Hire my company to conduct diversity training, and then we'll protect you. But this does two things. One, it creates an industry. Diversity training is now a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States. And then second, it really opens up these companies to something that they can't resist because it's very hard once you accept these kind of ideas to have a limiting principle to them.
Yeah, it really is. Now, I want to switch gears just a couple minutes left here and move to poverty and homelessness, because I know these are issues you've studied and care about. And one of the concerns I've heard from my friends who are in social work is that critical theory has invaded these realms as well and almost seems to want to keep a lot of people in insufferable living conditions, but just make them comfortable in those conditions. And part of it is, well, you've got society stacked against you. There's nowhere for you to turn. So we're just going to make you comfortable, or we're going to accept that it's some sort of life choice that you've made to be homeless. And I'm very interested actually in your thoughts generally in poverty and homelessness right now in the country and the solutions, particularly as you see places like San Francisco and Austin, Texas, and others, just kind of accept that this is normal for people to live in a tent on the sidewalk.
Yeah, we've seen that everywhere, and I think it really is an extension of what we were talking about just now, is that once this ideology gets into an institution, it really starts to take over. And if you look at homelessness in the West Coast cities, particularly where it's a really bad problem. They have adopted this because it does two things. One, it gives them a kind of explanation of the world, so they can say, well, the world is the country is racist, capitalism is exploitative, and therefore that explains why these people are on the streets, and it makes me the kind of good person or savior. But it also explains away their own failure. In Seattle, for example, the homelessness sector, and mostly public money, spends about $80,000 a year per person who's homeless, and yet there are still 12,000 people on the streets. The number has been going up and up and up. So this gives them a ready-made excuse where they can say, well, it's not because our policies have failed. It's because society is illegitimately exploitative and evil, and it's not my fault. So it really is sad, and I think the most tragic part, just to wrap up my on the soapbox, is that the most tragic part is that the ultimate victims are the poor and the disenfranchised and the vulnerable, who don't benefit from this ideology. They're actually just turned into political pawns that are used to make an intellectual point.
All right, last question for you, Chris. How did you get interested in this topic?
Yeah, I stumbled into it somewhat backwards. It's something that I've been following and thinking about for a number of years, but haven't done any reporting on it. There's a lot of commentary. But I had a couple sources reach out to me with some documents from inside institutions at local government, but also federal agencies. And I started reporting on some of these stories, kind of breaking these hard news stories about what was happening in the institutions. And then I just started getting a flood of tipsters and whistleblowers and anonymous sources dumping me documents telling me what was happening in all these institutions. So I realized that this story was much bigger than anyone had known. And then I quickly got to work actually breaking stories, putting together the facts, and then at a point last summer working with the White House on an executive order, and just continue to go from there.
Well, by the way, that was a great executive order. Russ Vought is a longtime dear friend of mine, and I was glad to see the White House push that order out on critical theory. So thanks for all the work you do. Thank you, by the way. I realize you're out on the West Coast as well in different time zones for being able to get up and be here with me. I am not a morning person and hate to do that. So thank you very much.
Well, I've got two kids, so I'm up early.
Oh, so yeah. Well, I'm sympathetic to that one. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye.
Bye. Chris Rufo. His website is Christopher Rufo, RUFO, ChristopherRufo.com. Highly, highly recommend it. He's got a lot of great articles on critical theory and what people around the country have to do with, what local governments, local institutions are having to do with. Great follow on Twitter as well at Real Chris Rufo. I'm going to go on and take a break. When we come back, we got folks on hold. We will take your phone calls. 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425.
You're listening to The Erick Erickson Show.
Hello there, it is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, well, you can't call. I got people on hold, and I'm going to go to Brady in Woodstock. Brady, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm well. Thank you, Eric, for having me on. I had a question about boycotts, and I know that a lot of folks don't think that those work out so well. And I was wondering if anybody actually did a focused boycott, or maybe on a single company, if something like that would work over multiple companies, or maybe just one item. Whether something like that would other companies would pay attention to, almost maybe like a scorched earth strategy, where one group would just take down one entity just so others would notice.
You know, I got to tell you, I go back and forth on this issue because I'm not a fan of boycotts. There are companies I don't shop with, and I don't really talk about them because I hate to summon the mob, but I'm more and more inclined to think that occasionally conservatives in numbers might have to choose to either shop at a place or not shop at a place. And my inclination has always been pick a place to positively shop instead of doing what the left does and negatively avoiding something. So, for example, all the conservatives were going to go see this movie, or we're going to go shop at Hobby Lobby or whatever the preferred conservative place is. Instead of saying, don't go shop here, go shop there, just go shop there and show our support. And I think in that case, those Fortune 500 companies would pay attention. One, that you're positively sending business in one direction, but also two, you're not nasty like the other side. The other side can be so nasty when it comes to this stuff. I think just being nice sets yourself apart. But something's going to have to give on this front. I've got friends of mine who have a website that show you the corporate spending in the country, what they give money to. Do they fund abortion? Do they fund woke enterprises and stuff like that? But the left has taken it a step further. Did you know there's actually an app now out there on the left that progressives use? I know someone who uses this app. When they go to the grocery store, they can scan the UPC label of a product and see if the company supports Republicans. And if they do, they don't buy the product.
Shocking.
It's completely a religion.
Right.
So I do think, look, let me leave you there. I appreciate you calling in on this one. And I think that conservatives do need to be discerning. I don't like boycotts, y'all. I really don't. I don't like telling you don't shop somewhere. I may tell you, look, I'm not shopping here and here's why. But I don't like organizing a mob to protest a business. And oftentimes these smaller businesses are just trying to navigate. Like, for example, I'll give you a good example. Harry's Razors. I, for the longest time, endorsed Harry's Razors on my evening radio program. I'm a customer. I am still a customer. I am not boycotting Harry's. I don't recommend a boycott of Harry's. They make a good product. But they stopped advertising with me because wokes complained that I was controversial. I have a sneaking suspicion it was also some Trump supporters who got mad at me after 2016 and also were harassing them. But by and large, they dropped me as an advertiser. And I'm still I was a customer of theirs before. I'll be a customer of theirs now. And I don't want to advertise a boycott of them. They're a good product. But then there are companies, I think, that are aggressively, militantly hostile to conservatives. I'm increasingly concerned about Disney. And I love Disney Plus, and I love Marvel and Star Wars. But Disney seems to think it can buy my childhood, and I'm going to have to be stuck watching them. And maybe not. I'm not sure. And then there are other companies out there that have gone completely woke. I try not to watch NBC or MSNBC. I'll be on Meet the Press on occasion, although ever since I said I would support Trump in 2020, they stopped having me on. I don't know. Life's too short for me to want to get worked up about boycotting. My religion is not wokeism. And the wokes pour. And part of this is on the left. One of the reasons the left does boycotts is because it is a religion to them. It is part of performance. Remember, Tim Keller wrote that great piece on critical theory and why it's so bad and contrary to Scripture. And one of the things he said is that it leads to performative actions to signal you're an ally. And those performative actions are to silence people, yell people down, get people canceled, or boycott. It's all performance to virtue signaling, essentially. Speaking of, I want to go full circle now. Speaking of things on the internet, I wrote a piece related to my opening monologue of this program this morning on the failures of the Republican Party in Georgia. If you weren't here in the first hour, let me give you a nutshell summation here. Our Republican legislators have refused to protect girls' sports, have refused to protect special needs kids who need better educations. They have refused to protect Christians on college campuses in Georgia. They have refused to protect Christian small businesses, and they have refused to protect your children from child predators the Board of Pardon and Paroles continues to release into our cities. But now they're making a big deal about absentee voting and voting rights in the state, and they're doing it not really to help you, but to help themselves. The Republican legislators in Georgia only ever help themselves. They never help you. It's all about keeping themselves in power. The times that they advance conservative legislation in Georgia are the times they know it's not going to pass. Like, for example, they passed the Religious Freedom Reformation Act in 2012 when they were up for re-election and Nathan Deal wasn't. And Nathan Deal promised them, even though he had said he would sign it into law, Nathan Deal promised the legislature, go on and vote for it and I'll veto it so you can say you did it without it ever going into law. With the fetal heartbeat legislation last year, a lot of the Republicans in the state legislature voted for it knowing a federal judge would cancel it. They do performance to try to keep you fooled, and they do these bait and switches. Right now, they're aggressively focusing on voting reform because it's all about keeping their power, not about helping you or your kids. I wrote about that this morning. I want every one of you to read it. If you will text the word data to 33777, I'll send you back the link. How the Georgia Republicans pull a bait and switch. And whenever any of your friends ask you why you're mad at the Georgia Republican Party, even though you're conservative, you can send them that link and say, see, time and time again, they tell me they're working for me, but they never do. They only work for themselves. The fact that the Georgia Board of Pardon and Paroles has let out of prison after 7 years the world's most prolific collector of child pornography, who was sentenced to prison for 1,000 years, they let him out after 7. And our legislature has conducted no investigation, done no inquiry, passed no legislation, and has not impeached the Board of Pardon and Paroles. They're letting them get away with it. Why? Because the Board of Pardon and Paroles hadn't encroached on their power, so they're perfectly fine letting them get away with anything so long as they don't impact the legislature. Text data to 33777.